with strength and conditioning coach Christian Marshall and MMA guru.
Big Dev. This is the newest member to the Combat Philly team. You know, I don't rock with a bunch of coaches like that. But the same way, we only got killers in here like Pete, Brel, Daoud. I done brought in my little, my strength and conditioning guru. And I wanted to speak on something because it's a big issue amongst all sports, specifically combat sports. Conversations that need to be had between strength and conditioning coaches and those guys, like you was just saying before, old school coaches and strength and conditioning coaches, especially in boxing, it always go left.
Yeah.
It always go left. One thing I respect about him is that before he do anything, he come to me first about my fighter. And we check in weekly, what is your fighter working on, so I can work on those movement patterns. I respect that because if I got, let's say, Seamus or Scott, or he got Qua or Marv or somebody in there, and we got them working on moving laterally with the jab, and all you got them doing is, you know, drilling rotations off their right hand. Now my fighter is trying to learn two different movements at the same time for two different applications. And then we start going haywire. And then when the communications start going, because the development is not happening at the same pace on both sides, that's when it start happening. Shout out Greg Hackett, because I know he hates strength and conditioning coaches half the motherfucking time. And also it's an issue because when things happen, it's just to the fan a little bit. When a person win, it's on him. When a person lose, it's on me. And that's, we gotta stop that. A team is a team is a team is a team is a team. And everybody gotta approach that. If the communication isn't like this between coaches, it's always gonna be an issue. But I'm gonna let him get into some of the things that he do for MMA fighters specifically in terms of, go ahead, Rock, baby boy.
So what I like to do is I like to do plyometric training, I like to do ballistic training, and I like to
What's
do
ballistic training?
Ballistic training just has to do with basic throw movements, typically movements that are going to emulate the sport. So movements like throwing the jab, throwing the cross, making sure that we're doing and emphasizing unilateral movements basically on one side. Just kind of steering away, but still utilizing aspects of the traditional styles of training, but tailoring it to the sport. And that's my job, that's my focus, that's what I emphasize with my guys, and that's what I always study on and improve on. And that can be seen through, you know, different aspects of my social media as well as other areas and other channels that I utilize and manage myself.
Now, being a strength and conditioning coach, do you study in depthly the sport that you're working in? Because I can imagine you don't just do
Same
MMA.
thing for boxing,
Yeah.
the same thing for MMA,
Yeah.
same thing for basketball. Obviously, they all, oh, this him. I'll just yell at motherfuckers. I'm like, do the push-ups.
Yeah, so what I do is I study the movements and I study the kinetic chain patterns that are utilized in the sport. What we want to do is we want to focus on not overcompensating certain muscle groups and utilize the joints and the movements that are used for that sport. So, you know, with the cross, making sure that each checkpoint is utilized without overcompensation, making sure that the foot pattern is in conjunction with the hip and is in conjunction with the shoulder, and making sure that those processes are fulfilled with each system, you know? So, for example, what I mean by that is, let's say that, you know, a boxer has a problem with the jab or the cross. The first thing I want to look at is foot placement. The second thing I want to look at is internal, external rotation of the knee. The third thing that I want to look at is the hip, and making sure that power is generated from the hip to the shoulder and executed through the fist.
You know, another thing that I appreciate about you, I ain't saying, every day, like he can pay her over here every day because he working with Scotty and Shane. If you guys been on the show, y'all know Scotty and Shane coming up wrecking shit. Every fucking class, he be on the sideline just watching. Coach, they doing this right. I see they not doing this right. I'm gonna work this with them. I'm gonna do this. So it's not just that he with my athletes during the training. It's the time off. He's studying their film training outside of, the strength and conditioning part. They studying their technique to make sure everything he's doing is represented and is translating. Because if it's not, you got to do something different or explain it better or drill it into him a different way. Because again, no matter how strong or fast motherfucker get, it's all about application. If you doing stuff like, if he can have my guys in the pool swimming all night, that's not going to make a better fighter. And they going to apply to fighting. So you got to make sure that everything he's doing, like you said, he's studying that shit, is applied to fighting, and you got to make sure it is being applied. And I appreciate that he always do that shit. Even in his free time. Just sit on the side, watch the guys, ask questions, talk to coaches. Even the coaches can't work with other fighters. But there's a couple guys that can vouch for me. Coach Wood, he can vouch for Coach Lee, can vouch for Ralph, can vouch for him. Legit shit right here. You feel me? And it's good because when he's working on stuff, he's getting my fighter strong in ways that's going to prevent a lot of that injury. And that's one of the things when we're in those long camps, and you get a strength and conditioning coach that's just want to be, run 100 miles, do 100 chin-ups, that kind of shit. It's going to break the body down. My boy still got to train 2-3 times a day, spar, 2-3 times a week, on top of just moving around. Half these fighters, still got regular jobs they got to deal with too. You can't just beat them down, especially in camp. Because you see it all the time, how fighters, they'll come in and fight looking great, and then when they go to perform, they run down. Their body don't know how to carry the new muscle. Body know how to carry the new movements and shit like that. So all those things is what comprises that relationship. And that's the shit that I think a lot of teams got to start honing in on. So if you're a strength and conditioning coach, like my boy Chris, like Rob, over there with the guys, because I know Rob good with communication too. That's the way you gotta do it. You can't just be going in there and have your set program. That's what all my fighters do. That ain't how it goes. You gotta approach everybody different. He trained both my guys, and neither one of them do the same thing. They both got completely different issues. You know what I'm saying? One guy get ready with his rotation and build power and explosiveness. The other one gotta learn how to stop on a dime, build balance while you're going at 200 miles per hour. You feel me? Those are two completely different things. And I checked him. I wanted to see if he was going to be doing the same thing in both of them. And he was. He's doing his motherfucking job. So that's the shit I want to see.
That's a question I got from Chris. How important is balance?
Balance is very important.
Base is everything in sports.
Exactly. The reason why balance is important is because a lot of the times, it's typically the stabilizer muscles that deal with the musculoskeletal system that are going to emphasize movement and control of those movements. Usually if a fighter is just, because I typically see the fighters, on their off time, they're working on a lot of bilateral exercises. They're not dynamic, things like deadlifts and squats, and that's good, but it's not building the muscles that you need to actually execute a technique without preventing energy leakage in that kinetic system. So I think balance is very important. It's important for efficiency of locomotion, and it's going to translate into the cage a lot of the time, or the ring.
In layman's terms, without a base, you can't get power or consistent movement.
That's something that's often not mentioned when it comes to strength and conditioning, though.
I know, and that's the disconnect. That's the disconnect. That's the biggest problem, is that it's not mentioned when base is the most. If you watch a ball player play, if he don't got good base, is he effective? All right, if you watch a football player play, if he ain't got good base, can he run well? All right then, so if you watch somebody that fight and every time they get hit, they breaking their base, every time, you see it when guys get touched, their whole body rocking. They don't know how to stay solid. When they throwing shots, they leaning over in their shots. You feel me? All that's balance. That's base. How you gonna do any of this shit and you ain't got a strong foundation? But see, that be the problem with a lot of the coaches. They be just going ahead and trying to throw all the furniture in the building, they ain't even put the bricks up yet. How the fuck you gonna start giving them all the fancy shit and they ain't got no foundation? You feel me? They be trying to take a guy from A to Z in 2-3 months. You feel me? That ain't gonna happen. When you lock in with a coach, the same way you lock in with a skill acquisition coach, boxing coach, MMA guy like me, you gotta lock in with him. It's a process. It's not a thing that's gonna happen quick like that. And building a base, figuratively and literally, is the most important part of this.
You feel me? Balance is always the essence of a good fighter.
Balance is always the essence.
Balance is important. You know, do a lot of drills.
That's my main call over there.
Make sure that
don't show that sparring.
certain movements are emphasized. You know, if I tell the guys, hey, make sure that you guys do isometric drills, a hook up on the medicine ball, hold that for the same duration that you would in a fight. That's a way that we build stability and proper stabilizer strength. We emphasize the Bosu ball. Shout out to Devon Williams. And we also emphasize a lot of pro-rotational movement. And that's something that's very key in our fighters. And that's the reason why we're seeing a massive improvement in their ability to perform and execute movements with this proper amount of power. Another thing that I think works too is very good perturbation training. Perturbation training is basically exercises where you are allowing them to execute the movements as they would, but you're applying external force. Typically how I like to do that is I tell them, hey, you know, throw the jab, throw the cross, just one movement of the jab or cross for the same duration that you would in a round, so 3 minutes, and I take the medicine ball and I'll hit different areas of their kinetic chain, because what that's going to do is create these micro movements that are disruptors in their body. And the more that they get used to that, the more that they adapt to that, the better that the technique is going to be when they don't have those movements, when they don't have those forces put on their body. So I think that balance is important. I think that these drills that we do are very important for injury prevention, and not only that, for proper execution of the technique without compromising other areas that might cause injury later on down the line.
Chris, what's the mission statement?
The mission statement is to improve joint stability, joint health, and maximize power through process of the kinetic chain.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you, bro.
I appreciate you. It's a pleasure to interview with you.